How do I respectfully come out and say that Guillermo Del Toro's Frankenstein is his least good-looking high-budget feature? Yes, I probably rotted a part of my soul with a clickbait title implying ugliness onto the film, but I am running out of options. It is funny seeing calling this movie visually abysmal becoming less and less of a hot take in real time while writing the script. I am only 3 Crimson Peak rewatches close to that conclusion, but I'll get there soon. For now, I still don't think Guillermo ever made an ugly film, including Frankenstein deserving the praise it gets for whatever Guillermo Del Toro usually gets praised for. Production design or telling a story through character design, this time by having Frankenstein leaving every heartbreak with an additional layer of clothing, more shielded, less innocent, less vulnerable, looking more and more like something out of Bloodborne. It's just that not even watching this on what was passing as an IMAX screen could hide the fact that it was ultimately produced for a streaming destination. I live in one of the 3 cities where the movie got to play in theaters and I choose to complain? You know me. It was just unfortunately shot and directed by the same people behind Crimson Peak, The Shape of Water, and Nightmare Alley, now serving as perfect references for what Frankenstein could have looked like if Netflix wasn't a disease preventing the directors it jails into its system to reach the standards they've previously set for themselves. Having Crimson Peak as background noise over the week is what really made me pull the trigger. I mean, you can tell the difference, right? If not, there's a reason behind me doing all this. I may have a purpose. Am I really gonna spend the next 8 minutes slandering the look of a nonetheless passionately made, above average, tailored, competent if somewhat lesser gothic tale of rage and longing from our favorite creature sympathizer? Maybe binging Guillermo del Toro's entire filmography due to having enjoyed Frankenstein enough somewhat earns me the position to vocalize displeasure in seeing my man's vision being yet another victim of Netflix's ongoing crimes. It's the Rebel Moon video all over again, except I won't have to grave dig as deep to even recognize the auteur in question because the movie wastes no time stacking the Del Toro-isms, starting with incorporating his violent peculiarities into a fight scene. A guy gets hit so hard he sees his own curvature. You know you've earned your visionary title when people can tell who made the movie just for how the creature moves its fingers. Taking a shot whenever there's a Del Toro quirk from window framing to unromantic injuries would make for an excellent drinking game. You'll just be long dead before even getting to the cathartic final act, worth experiencing while fully sober, in my opinion. Might be an effective, if not temporary, cure to your limerence. I can confirm, this one's for all the yearners out there. Guillermo del Toro's the kind of guy who'll come and direct a material's 10th adaptation and justify its existence just for being who he is. Him recycling visuals makes it easier to track him down across movies, but also makes the theater exclusive to streaming dichotomy all the more painful to observe. Guillermo did nothing wrong, forever innocent. Netflix, on the other hand, is gonna catch more than strays because there's a discernible pattern. The web's already picking up on there not being much of a point to building a whole boat for your set piece if studio circumstances are gonna make it look like this. Just last week I watched At World's End, so looking at the alleged practical Arctic boat set just to come back to this was kind of a fatal blow. Gore Verbinski's pirate magic has never been more missed. VFX is always going to be streaming's first victim, so I wept when Victor set the tower ablaze, remembering what fire looked like in Del Toro's last theater exclusive thanks to being allowed to use real fire for the VFX artist to use as a reference and complete the arson. But the bigger issue here comes down to sets, where Guillermo normally gets to actually go stupid crazy, to express himself creating some of the most beautiful gothic frescoes modern cinema ever got to bless us with. Crimson Peak, the movie which should have earned cinematographer Dan Lawson his Oscar, is practically the blueprint for the vibe Guillermo ultimately ran with in Frankenstein. You can tell he spent the whole shooting process celebrating having a literal house built upon request by the way the camera devours every curtain, every dead leaf, every crack, every stain, every pillar, every wallpaper peel. Guillermo's vision demands the building of worlds, whether it's a troll market or a dying, bleeding mansion, which obviously requires more money than Netflix or any streaming company would ever provide. Them doing their absolute best to show off this set despite actors barely interacting with it really gave me a new appreciation for that one shot of Edith storming out with the camera following her from one room to another as she passes through a snow leak. That's cinema, something Netflix is terminally allergic to. Yes, there is a practical set here, but one obviously not large or detailed enough to expose in as much light, allowing the kind of deep focus shots that sell you on a set's practicality. An indispensable Del Toro ingredient because what's the point of being given a whole space ornate with props and accessories if you're just gonna waste it with a shallow depth of field? As the term implies, deep focus shots are just shots where everything is in focus, background and foreground. Begonia just came out. I saw it, and it is brimming in amazing instances, typical of Yorgos. Great movie. Cinema. More lights also allows to extend how far the camera is allowed to see. to focus. Them not lighting Frankenstein's backgrounds as much almost comes off as them trying to hide the CG extensions, a classic, and it's most apparent with them repeatedly showing that same background, not once showing it in deep focus, because you just know the whole upper half is missing, ruining many shots that could have had the same amount of bite as Edith quite literally doing the exact same thing, walking down a stair set except the background's real so they don't have to create fake shadows out of shame. Scratching a visual itch perfectly describes what pretty much every corner of that mansion does for me. That hellish, spiky hallway never being neglected by the lighting even when it's out of focus is them showing off. No money wasted. That's after several shots where the set just carries the experience. This is what I mean by something looking both dark and vibrant. It's why I find Edith's bedroom more interesting to look at than Victor's corpse-ridden steampunk laboratory. Bummer. Having a real set also permits larger lens variety, which means that your close-ups won't all look the same. Crimson Peak gets to be a far more interesting movie to look at due to the dialogue scenes being diversely shot, giving grandeur to the close-ups, making them feel epic, for lack of a better term. I think the Nerd Writer made a video about that, talking about Licorice Pizza. It's a good video. Typically. I don't hate wide lenses, but sometimes you gotta use that zoom to remind people of the scale only cinema permits, which includes close-ups having a focal length that's not just limited to the nose and like one eye while everything else just melts into the background. Another Netflix classic. Greg Fraser figured out how to best use it, responsible for popularizing it, I think, but more often than not, it just feels like a painter running out of the paint he'd used to sharpen the frame, mainly characters' head and shoulders. Frankenstein, the Netflix production, not affording the paint not only being a more generous depth of field, but also larger sets, make it feel like an incomplete render of the frescoes that are normally a given from Guillermo. It's really what made watching Maya, not her, Maya, walking around holding a chandelier for 2 hours remotely enthralling. Immaculate vibes. Every frame and painting is a cliche thing to say about any film with a consistently distinct aesthetic, but if any movie out of Guillermo's gallery earns that expression, it's his most quote-unquote boring one. Is there any other way to put it? I've got a bit on this one. I've been obsessing over color variations given to faces by certain kinds of lighting, and it's hard to ignore the value it adds to a frame when noticing its absence. You just cry imagining Frankenstein being given those red-hot shadows, this fluorescent component I choose to claim as a Dan Laustsen signature. The difference between Frankenstein and Nightmare Alley is that the latter's unequivocal greenness came from colored lighting or shadows instead of mostly coming down to the color grade, added in post, a filter which creates something both less unique or natural. An ironic thing to say about Nightmare Alley, which is as stylistically unnatural as lighting can get, and don't get me wrong, if Nightmare Alley has anything, it's a color grade, but I think Netflix is doing everything it can to help me better tell the difference between atmosphere created on set versus through post-production. Something about Netflix's production system automatically stains any kind of vision people like Guillermo would want to bring to life, and many shots being the repeats of their better non-Netflix versions are dead giveaways of what streaming systematically can't get you. If stuff like slight rim light sharpening a silhouette against the background didn't matter to you 5 minutes ago, I hope it does now. I'm not living with this sickness alone. I guess my issues do boil down to needs more sharpness. Imagine Guillermo Del Toro being sent that as a note in response to his final cut. He'll be fine. It's just becoming harder and harder going over the same aesthetic notions in a way that doesn't feel like self-plagiarization. Always praying that Patrick Tomaso takes over to complete the investigation. I'm just the guy who points to the alleyway guiding the authorities to the crime scene. Call me superficial for visuals having such a dominion over me, even if Guillermo would likely be happy to see that aesthetics matter this much to even the lowest of commoners. It's clearly what he puts the most effort into, so why stress? Besides, it's all been praised underneath the critique, using his work as the bar. I wish people were better taught, not by me, to discuss about frames with the same level of minutia as actual paintings, especially when talking about a filmmaker remembered for his visuals above all else. Having spent 30 years creating a world, recycling motifs movie after movie, always resulting in something new yet similar. Idiosyncratic. Frankenstein visibly being the culmination of Del Toro's work is what drove me to revisit his output, noticing all the visual and narrative recurrences. We hung out. The 61-year-old visionary is also a youthful soul, which manifests in his visible enthusiasm for creature aesthetics comparable to a kid and his favorite action figure, except the action figure is life-sized and features in a $120 million film given an autistic amount of love and detail. No wonder why there's always a body being autopsied in every Del Toro. That's how he gets to indulge, to study the thing up close with a visible tenderness often spoken through the mise-en-scène, like displaying the creature being operated on, posed in a way that evokes a model directed by a sensitive photographer. A choice only a visionary with a genuine love for the monstrous would make. He's like an angel of death secretly making movies to pass on a message, subliminally cluing us in on his true nature. A blessing. This movie, like all the ones before it, makes it all the more apparent. I was afraid my script was going to be fully spent lamenting the Netflix effect, but I fortunately connected with this movie for the same reasons I connect with every Del Toro, and it'd be dismissive, irredeemable, frankly, not to mention those same reasons, often taken for granted. See, my end goal is for Netflix to crash and burn, but Guillermo's pro-creature, pro-art, anti-AI, one-of-a-kindness inevitably led him to make something that at least sticks out of the pile. It's not bad, it's not mediocre, not anything nearly close to those things. It's just a Netflix movie and that tends to taint the overall picture, but at the end of the day, Guillermo Del Toro made the Frankenstein movie and I think that's enough to consider. I just think it looks kinda funny.